everybody. Welcome to another week of Chasing Frets, and I'm joined this week by Joe Gore.
Hey, happy to be here and talk to our remarkable guest.
Yeah, our guest this week is Daniel Donato, kind of a young country guitar ambassador to the internet. And the other thing he's a big ambassador of is the music of the Grateful Dead, which is what we're talking about today. And when I threw out this topic to you, Joe, you gave me fair warning that you haven't always been the biggest fan of the Dead.
I think you and Daniel make a powerful case. I don't hear it myself, but sometimes you. I'm a San Franciscan, and sometimes you don't give adequate respect to what comes from your home turf.
Is that kind of what it was? It was just like you've been around it, your whole.
I am not going to badmouth the Grateful Dead in front of an audience of podcasters who tuned into something with the word Grateful Dead on it. And as you'll hear, Daniel makes a very, very passionate, case. I'm sorry, not even so much making a case, but just his passion for the music and how it inspired him. And he shows us front and center that I took this idea and I took it to this other place. So obviously it's been an endless source of ideas and inspiration for, this young player who, as he'll mention during the course of the interview, was born the year Jerry died.
Yeah. And so we're going to go deep into the Grateful Dead. We're going to talk about influences and playing and even a couple recommendations for where to start if you are kind of maybe just a little interested in getting into it. So we're going to hop right into this conversation about the Grateful Dead with Daniel Donato. Hey, Daniel, thank you so much for joining us today on Chasing Frets. How you doing, man?
Oh, fantastically well. How are y'all doing?
We're doing so good, and this is so much fun to catch up with you. And the topic we're going to hit today is our mutual love for the Grateful Dead, and we're going to shoehorn Joe into this as well, even though he might not be as dyed-in-the-wool of a fan as you and I are, pun intended.
Well, I'm the one here who's old enough to have had a copy of Working Man's Dead when it was new. So, I'm going in open-minded. I want any guitarists who play as well as you guys, I take their opinions. At least I listen to them very carefully. And Daniel, I'm stoked to meet you. I've so enjoyed your videos and the work you did on Jason's record and your album. And
Thank you, Joe.
An admirer from afar, and it's really cool to meet you.
Likewise. Thank you very much. So you had a new copy of Working Man's Dead in 1971?
I was a little kid. It was more like my cousins, but yeah, I'm old enough to have been listening to stuff.
That is beautiful.
And I think I just heard that they're putting out the 50th anniversary, like super deluxe edition.
Yeah, that's been out.
Or of American Beauty. I'm sorry, American Beauty is coming out.
Yeah, and they did a thing recently called Angel Share, which is all the B-roll and outtakes of them figuring out the arrangements. And for everyone who's listening to the podcast format and likes this kind of high conscientious approach to music, the Grateful Dead cast, every episode so far has been dedicated to, mostly every episode, to a specific song off Working Man's Dead, which is wild. It's very insightful and inspiring dive into the music.
Yes. So after you're done listening to this, go and check that out. So I want to talk about, I've heard you tell a story about you having the school teacher who hooked you up with a bunch of bootlegs. I've heard you tell a story several times, but I want to take it back to the one time that you and I kind of really connected on this music. And my band was coming through town. We were staying the night at John Bollinger's house.
Oh.
Typical band hang. We're all just crashing wherever we can find room in Bollinger's house. We invite Andy Ellis over. We invite you over.
Right.
And instruments are brought out. And we start playing. And very quickly, it veers to playing some Grateful Dead tunes. And it was just, 6 or 7 of us, and we're just passing around solos. We played Shakedown, we played Friend of the Devil. And what it kind of dawned on me that night is how those tunes are starting to become standards.
Yeah.
In certain circles, much like All the Things You Are, Stella by Starlight. And so I wanted to ask you, when you had this appreciation growing up that this teacher hooked you up with these bootlegs, when did you start to really connect with their music on stage?
So it was then I started connecting with the music. The Grateful Dead has been in my life. I came to find out even this year, when I was 3 years old. When my mom was pregnant with me, she followed the Dead, and when I was born, when we were living in New Jersey, my uncle, who was watching me while my mom worked her day job and night job, we were living on the beach, and he would go and take me on the beach and play tapes, and I would just dance. Just 2-year-old, 3-year-old kid. I had no idea. And the first 3 albums my dad ever gave me when I first started guitar was American Beauty, Led Zeppelin box set, which I guess is more than an album in itself, and then Stevie Ray Vaughan Greatest Hits. And it was just like, for American Beauty, that was kind of an outlier out of those two because it is guitar intensive, but it's not. And that was the first like clean guitar tone I had heard. And even then, my kind of barometer towards timbre and tone and intention and dynamic of music always leans to the more psychedelic, peaceful, not so like, look at the bulge in my jeans kind of approach to guitar. Mm-hmm. And I love that. You can just really hear that Jerry did his homework in a way that was very American sounding. You know what I mean? Just very folky and very major bass with a lot of chromaticism. I just loved that. It just innately, before I could even understand what the quantitative parameters of it were, as I'm translating now. But so what happened was with Mr. Ragland, my teacher, he gave me this over 150 shows of the Dead in CD format. And it was right when I started driving. And so when I was gigging every day, about 5 nights a week, driving about an hour from Spring Hill, Tennessee, where I lived, to Nashville, Tennessee, where I played, where a girlfriend should have been in the passenger seat. There were all these Grateful Dead bootlegs. And that happened for about 2 years. 5 days a week, 4 or 5 days a week, I was listening to these records, Dick's Picks, JGB, random non-official released shows, right? And I was able to approach it without anybody telling me like, hey man, this Scarlet Fire ain't so good. It's just like, no one was telling me. I was doing on my own accord, my own barometer, which is the best way to create and also consume. And that, when it started hitting me, the moment that it really hit me was from the first disc on the first song, was when they kicked off with the song Big River, which is a Johnny Cash song. So where I was playing in Nashville was a place called Robert's Western World, Jason, as you know, because we've spent many a night there.
Oh, yeah.
The home of traditional country music. And it's been a literal portal on this earth for country music since the Grand Ole Opry opened. Roberts is one of the 2 original venues down on Broadway that has been there since the get-go. And now there's over 64 stages on that street, but Roberts is the one place. Roberts is also the place where Willie Nelson bought Trigger. So there's something cosmic happening.
So he bought it at Roberts?
Yeah, because Roberts used to be Showbud Steel Guitar Company,
okay.
Which is where Shot Jackson and Buddy Emmons invented the pedal steel in that building.
Perfect.
Insane,
yeah.
Right? And that's also where Willie bought Trigger. And it's where Hank Williams will go after the Opry, because it's, you walk out the back door of the Ryman and you can walk right into Roberts. Yeah. So we were playing Johnny Cash songs in our sets every night. And I was like, I know this song. But these people, they obviously are not from the country, but they get the lyrics because they're telling the story and it feels right. And the guitar is beautiful. And the instrumentation is outlandishly unique and really well executed. And they're jamming in a way that sounds like they did their homework again. And it sounds beautiful and strategic. And it was very much the way that we played downtown. We were jamming all the time because we would play for 4 hours at a time. We had to. It was part of the gig and union rules. So it's just like, I kind of understood all of a sudden that you can actually take country music and tell a story not only with the lyrics, but with the instrumentation in a way that's really reflexive, in a way that also you can go for, 7 minutes on a 1-2-4-5 song. So that was it for me, was hearing disc 1, track 1. I forget what show it was, but it was Big River with the Grateful Dead. And it was just like, blew my mind. It really did. It started everything for me, really, in the way that I still think today, was from that moment on. Yeah.
So it was Johnny Cash who took the Grateful Dead and what you were doing on stage in Roberts and connected them.
In some way, man. And it was just, it was hearing Jerry starting solos. And if you go to Don Rich, who played with Buck Owens, Mixolydian, a lot of major, a lot of minor with some chromaticism tied in there. And that's what Jerry was doing. And then as I've developed and, become more intrigued and higher thinking in the way I approach music, at least trying to be, I get now that Jerry was wildly inspired by country and Western music, and it made total sense. But at the time, I could hear it. I didn't even know where his footsteps came from. But so it's wild, man. It really, yeah. They're just like my lighthouse of music.
Do you have a very favorite bootleg? Like if you had to do that commute with only one disc for 2 years, which one would you pick?
I like Dick's Picks Volume 18 from Iowa.
Iowa City?
Iowa City, right? I think so.
Yep.
It was at they start with Bertha.
Yep.
Any show that starts with Bertha, I tend to love. We start our shows with Bertha too, live. There's just something about it that is just like
it's this bubbling thing, like when you start that, just playing the chords. It's almost, I mean, it's a riff, I guess you could say, but he's basically just strumming the chords in a very rhythmic, in a very specific way. And just by strumming those chords in that way, the energy starts to bubble up.
I call it the hippie strum.
Oh.
Because check it out. So Bertha. All right, now let's speed it up a little. Allman Brothers. Let's move it up to A. So I think Jerry really, in the most rhythmic way possible, that is the psychedelic, positive, happy-minded. I don't know all the adjectives to describe it, but Bertha really is like the nexus of that whole vibe, which is just hundreds of songs.
And you slow it down, you put it in F, and add a funk beat to it, and it's Back on the Train by Fish.
Yeah! Whoa, come on.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, see, the examples don't stop ending either. I posted that video on YouTube, the hippie strum, not trying to plug it. And people are like, yeah, man, it's also this song. I'm like, well, yeah, it makes sense. Music is full of themes that work from artist to artist, genre to genre. But yeah, to answer your question, Joe, Volume 18 Dick's Picks is really so fantastic. And also To Terrapin. I think it was a 77 show. Mm-hmm. That one, I forget which one that date is, though.
I think usually when people ask me where to start, I said start at 77, and then you can either, if you want more psychedelic, you go back in time, and if you want maybe more exploratory or danceable, you go forward in time.
Wow. Yeah. Wow, that's great. And then, 90s is kind of I think you should be listening to them for at least 3-4 years before you start trying to approach 90s with a clear headspace.
Explain, please.
Well, just in terms of who was on the crew at that time and how they were monitoring their sound and what Jerry was doing on a technical level, what Bobby was doing on a technical level, and what Phil was doing in his headspace at the time. And also having worked with Robin Ford on the recent record that we put out, he'd been good friends with Phil, for decades. And I'd come to find out that there was a lot of, personal indifference towards what was going on in the culture of the band at that time. And so you can kind of feel in the music. And then also when Brent Midland died, everything changed.
Yeah.
I mean, that was really, it's almost hard to listen to those shows. I also feel very crazy trying to insert any opinion here because I was born the year Jerry died. So I don't really know, you know what I mean? But coming from an outside perspective and also kind of helping carry on the torch of what they're doing now and turning people onto them all the time through social media, the 90s are indeed just a different kind of a different thing.
It's not. I don't think the '90s are going to make a fan of anybody.
Oh wow.
I think you got to start somewhere earlier to get hooked, and then as your conscience needs more exploring, then you dip into the '90s. Because when Bruce Hornsby comes in, that has a whole nother vibe to it. Or those
accordion?
shows where Branford sits in, Branford Marsalis, and they take it way out. I mean, yep,
All day.
yeah.
16 minutes. 16 minutes.
No, I think it's fascinating to hear your take on it, Daniel, even though you kind of never lived during prime Dead years, because, you're approaching it without the, the history and the cultural associations of my generation, for better and worse. And you're just regarding it as abstract music that moves you in a particular way.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful.
So you talked about the hippie strum.
Uh-huh.
So we got to talk about Bobby's rhythm playing.
Yeah.
Because it's such an underrated piece that you can't really appreciate it until you almost like take it away sometimes.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know if you've checked out like the isolated rhythm parts on YouTube.
Oh my God. Okay. I'm so deep into those. Have you found the Jerry isolated parts on YouTube yet?
I have, but but I feel like those are less revelatory to me because he's always kind of at the top of, he's taking most of the solos. His playing is kind of at the top of the Sunday there.
But hearing that live at the Greek isolated Bobby on the Pepto-Bismol is absurd.
Yeah. So tell me what you kind of take away from Bobby's rhythm playing.
So I'm starting a series on YouTube called Weird Chords. WEIR apostrophe D. Which is, a meditation on the Bob Weir approach to music in general. And Bobby to me is my absolute he's just my absolute when it comes to music. Like I've always loved his playing. I always will. The way that he incorporates Roy Rogers, Sons of the Pioneers, 1940s, 1950s cowboy chords into the format of the Grateful Dead is unparalleled. It's beautiful. And the song choice that he would bring in, it's just like, it's the total seating. He was like the original Cosmic Country guy. And so yeah, the thing that I love about Bob Weir's approach to chords is that he really was egoless in that he would allow the entire band to kind of blossom. And then as you see his role in Dead and Company now, it's much more authoritative. But in the Grateful Dead, it was its own thing. And so it's like Bobby would never just play a G. Bobby would play a C-shaped G. So it was very much caged bass. And then he would do great, like sus4 substitutions, like in Casey Jones, like. I'm driving that train, I'm cocaine. Like, what? Are you serious? Like, that's really cool. Like, that's really cool. And the way that it's just advanced enough for it to stick out, that song being only 12 tracks for being used, that it's really fast. Like, that's just enough of an advanced piece of harmony for it to stick out and make the whole song better. So it was never too outside for it to be like, well, what's that? But it wasn't never too inside for it to just be like rock and roll wall of sound noise, and not in a glorious way like Phil Spector, but like in a Ramones way, which I don't really vibe with in a huge way. It's
and
very
that for
facile.
sus, that's like a very gospel cadence.
Yeah, I've never thought of it in that sense, but yeah, I think it's called a
It's a
plagal
cadence?
a plagal cadence, right?
Yeah, I went to music school, so am I right, Joe? Plagal cadence?
It's kind of
4 to 1
yeah.
is plagal.
Technically, it's not really a cadence, but if it were a cadence, it would be plagal.
Yeah.
And then a formal cadence is 5 to 1, right?
There's all sorts of. There's a lot of different. Cadence just means a place where you come to the conclusion of a musical phrase or idea.
I see.
And it resolves to the tonic, presumably. But also, you at the very beginning, you were talking about the upbeat, bright, major key, clean tone quality of the music.
Yeah.
And of course, when and then when you were talking about the Bob Weir stuff, and you were talking about how he's playing like barred, C shapes.
Yeah.
Where all the open strings and hammer-ons and pull-offs all fall within the major key. It's not got the blues inflections like when you're playing, say, in an A shape or an A shape or a E shape. And it just sort of built-in happy.
Oh wow, built-in happy. Wow, it's really efficient way to go about it. I've tried to take it even a step further, and so like, if you look at some of like those Bob Wills. Or like Mama Try is a perfect example, like a country song that they would do. So like, first thing I remember knowing was that lonesome whistle blowing and the youngin's dream of growing up to ride. You could also go, first thing I remember knowing that lonesome whistle blowing and the youngin's dream of growing up to ride. On a freight train leaving town, not knowing where I'm bound. No one could change my mind, but Mama tried. And it's this idea, you can just literally walk. And that's kind of what Bobby was doing. And if you go back and listen to McCoy Tyner, that's what McCoy Tyner's doing all over the place. It seems like Bob was just able to really take his understanding of where he was adding value to the band and fulfill it to the utmost potential, as opposed to getting in any way that, like, sonically, like, you're never like, I'm hearing too much of Bobby. I've never thought that, at least. You know what I mean? So that's a beautiful thing if you're able to play, one instrument your whole life and you don't ever become too much. I can get so sick of hearing myself play sometimes.
Did Weir do those sort of walking things?
Not to that degree of that facile technical thing. I think that's just part of my generation. You notice, like, pretty much everyone from mid-90s onward, they play faster, much younger. And it's only getting more that way. And I think it's just because of the information overload that we are able to access at zero cost of entry, pretty much, right? People are just playing amazing things at the age of 9 years old now.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to jam band music, I feel like there's two distinct camps of fans. One, people who are there for the songs,
right,
and one who are there for the jams.
Yeah.
Which one? It sounds like the songs are what brought you in more than the 26-minute Dark Stars.
Yeah, man, I'm an interesting case. So, being from Nashville, there's the cliche of the three chords and the truth. And I never thought of another way of life until I heard of jamming. I love jamming because I play guitar, and I like a lot of guitar. I got into guitar through guitar players, like players that really did their homework and put in the hours, and were very much technically proficient. And I've always loved the technical proficiency. The Grateful Dead really is the best of both worlds, where they really do bring songs. Being from Nashville, again, it's just like, if you don't respect the song, the city will have its way with you. You know what I mean? You got to understand the song is first. So I've always had that. And then with jamming, it just is something I think it's who I am as a person, and who I am as a musician. And you combine that with my love for a technical ability on the instrument and loving practicing and really just getting lost in the music. 26-minute jam is a perfect place for someone who has that kind of mindset to indulge and do so in a way that's valuable to the listener. If the listener's in that headspace and is wanting to consume it. And so the Grateful Dead will do both to you. A perfect example, they'll go into they do Dark Star, one of the most infamous jams, and they go into El Paso by Marty Robbins, one of the best-selling country songs in history. It was number one for something like 12 weeks. Just an amazing song. And
yeah, great guitar playing on that track too.
Grady Martin on that, playing on all. So Marty Robbins' two biggest songs, produced by Chet Atkins at RCA Studios, were cut on the same day in the same session. And it's at the same studio that Dave Cobb works out of now. So it's like there's something in Nashville, in certain buildings, it's real. And as I get older and I play other places in the world and I come back to Nashville, I play a lot of places. There is something about certain buildings in Nashville, man, where there is a thing that's happening there, and I don't know why. But Robert's one of those places. RCA Studio A is one of those places. It's wild.
Where are you at with all the modern Grateful Dead offshoots? Because
How so?
our mutual friend Andy Ellis, big
yeah.
Grateful Dead fan, when Dead and Company first came out, they came out, some stuff popped up on YouTube. Like the next day, him and I were talking. He's like, Jason, this is the thing that's getting me back into the Grateful Dead.
Woohoo!
And he's like OG Grateful Dead guy. He was in college in the 60s, in the late 60s. So, but some people can be really split on, is it really the Grateful Dead after July 95?
No, it's not. I think absolutely no, it's not Grateful Dead. Grateful Dead was Jerry Garcia, Phil Lesh, Bob Weir, Bill and Mickey. And everyone else involved in the crew, obviously, right? Definitely it's not the Grateful Dead. But I'm not one to say. That's where I feel like I actually add a lot of value to the conversation. If I could ask the universe for anything, if the universe is listening in on this podcast, I would love to play in Dead and Company one day with John Mayer. It'd be my absolute life dream if I could do that. Mm-hmm. And O'Teal, Bill and Mickey, and Jeff. I mean, that would just be...
And what song, Bertha?
I'd like to be in the band if that'd be something I could do.
Sure, but they're coming through town. You're sitting in on one tune. They have 200 songs. They're like, all right, dealer's choice, Daniel.
I know every song, man. I'm telling you, I could play the whole show. I really could right now.
We sure, but you know what? We're cutting it down to one song, Daniel.
One song, Daniel. Listen, Daniel, we got in on a... Oprah wants us to come in and do one song. Oprah's coming back to television, and she's having a one-song guest artist, and you're somehow doing this. Bertha, Tennessee Jed. A very Bobby heavy intensive song. I would love to do a very signature Bobby song. So maybe even Saint of Circumstance, Estimated Profit, something like that. It also depends on the city. Like I'd like to do Ramble on Rose if it happens to be in New York. You know what I mean? Or there's that's
West
a tough
LA
one for me.
Fadeaway.
I'd like to do Bertha and the Good Lovin'. That's what I'd like to do.
See, now there you go. That's the way to do it because that could suck up a half an hour.
Yeah, it depends on the show, right?
Right.
That's real.
That could chunk up a half an hour.
That would be my utmost people don't like when you set ridiculous goals and say things like that, but it's I think about that. That's why I keep that poster back there every day. I try to every day spend time focusing on the Grateful Dead and listening to Bobby and trying to think like Bobby all the time.
Since this is audio only, we can see you, but the listeners can't. What is the poster?
Oh yeah, so there's a poster behind me. Through good faith somehow this year, good karma, I was able to get 2 tickets to go see them in New Year's Eve in San Francisco, and it was the first time I had seen them since their first tour. And so I'm right up there on the rails on the ground floor. Just it blew my mind for 2 nights in a row, and changed the way that I think of myself and the way I think about music. It had some seriously enlightening questions come to me, and so I keep a little moment. It's a poster. They did a limited 300 run poster that came with the VIP package, whatever it was, the ticket holders. And it's cool, man. It's something I think about every day. I just try to put conscious energy into lending myself to that project. I just love what Dead and Company is doing. I think it's one of the most beautiful things ever. And just in a general sense of how marketing and music and brands work, the collaborative nature of how everything goes forward now is insane. You see it with brands all the time, people collaborating with influencers, quote unquote, whatever, right? People who have leverage on a following stance, working with already established entities. Happens with Nike, happens with cereal, and now it's happening with the Grateful Dead. And I think that's really beautiful. And that's why we see LeBron James wearing Grateful Dead shirts now. And only the truth can stand the test of time. And clearly the Grateful Dead has stand the test of time. So they're only a sentiment of truth. And so I love it, man. I'm the biggest fan in the world.
Well, that's a great way to end our first episode with you this week, Daniel. So he's going to be back with us later this week for a couple more episodes.
Thank you.
So stick around, and we'll have more with Daniel Donato.